It's your brother Sorry back with another one. Um, gonna hop back on some of this TM, this True Master material and everything like that. Um, we're gonna go into one of the unique features of this material. Um, and just as a sidebar, appreciate everybody. I don't know, rocking with me and kind of following the material, kind of supporting me. I appreciate all the all the eyes on, all the lights, everything like that. Y'all rocking with me, I'm rocking with y'all. So Um, this kind of goes into, let's say, when they always reference the double slit experiment. Anybody want to Google that? Yeah, the double slit experiment is something that was done back in. It was first done, I think, 1801, something like that. Thomas Young, something like that. Did the experiment. You can Google and see what the actual experiment entailed. But the long story short of what the results of it, or why it would even be important, what we talking about, is it's when people came with the notion that matter exists as either a particle or a wave. That's how they came with that. Now, that's a whole nother long conversation. The whole idea of particles and waves, because when you get into particles, you get into what they call atomism. I mean, ancient people had a notion of, particles and things or whatever case may be. So that's a whole nother long conversation. But for our purposes, what we're talking about, as far as if you've seen the title of the video, how the subconscious mind conforms to systems, or how the subconscious mind conforms to games or structures that we give our attention to as it pertains to the experiential and everything like that. So we're talking about how matter can appear to be either a particle or a wave. So basically, in the experiment, it just shows when you give your attention to something, it crystallizes into that particle form. Otherwise, it's just a wave. We're in this big quantum soup, so called, or what have you. Now, for our purposes, when discussing the experiential true master and all that, or whatever case may be, as we say in true master and in the experience from which it comes, anything that you give your attention to is a symbol. So, thus, anything that you give your attention to, a message can be derived out of that, because symbols and patterns are the agents of principles, which are themes. You see what I'm saying? So, that's where the meaning of the thing actually comes in. So, we're gonna keep rocking with this. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, man, go back and check out some of my previous videos, because I should have like 80 something videos at this point. So go back and check out some of the things that are described in some of the previous videos. I got a whole playlist, deeper dives and all that, where I kind of go in more depth, self to self. It's a whole playlist on here that kind of um, breaks it down. Some of this stuff is in the book, some of it is not. Some of this actually adds on to some of the material that's in the book. A lot of the purpose for the videos is so if a person ran across the book, this gives it more flesh. This kind of makes it come alive a little bit more, because it may not be, you may hear somebody talk about it and then, okay, well, what does that really mean? And when you actually see a video, oh, okay, this is what he's talking about. Okay, so all right, so the subconscious mind conforms to the symbols and systems familiar to the individual. All right. No one group or system has a monopoly on spirituality or communication from higher levels of the mind. Okay, so what I mean when I say this is, um, okay, so with the experiential is a loose divination system. We can identify patterns and we can discern messages from these patterns in real time, by discerning the theme that's behind the pattern. So everything that you give your attention to at all times, it's always communicating with you. It's just the limitation is your ability to perceive and decode it. Now, 9 times out of 10, we're always mentally caught up in the past and in the present. We're constantly in and out of trance states. So the majority of this stuff, we're not even in the present moment enough to even discern the majority of this. So, but when you start paying attention to patterns, because this is not any spiritual mumbo jumbo, this is how artificial intelligence is programmed. They program artificial intelligence, and this is how algorithms and things work off of pattern recognition. So I'm not saying anything that's just all spiritual and all out of the league of reality. So so in previous videos, I talked about filtering a martial art um, through the experiential or the idea of symbols, patterns, and principles. Now, the idea of symbols, patterns, and principles, it renders damn near anything you give your attention to having a divinatory meaning. So I can go outside and my car can't, it won't start. And it's a divinatory meaning behind that because my car is in my experience. I drive my car. The wear and tear on my car is an extension of the way I drive, and it's an extension of my nervous system and the data coming from my nervous system. So the particular things that I have wrong with this and this machine that I use on a regular should reflect something in my reality. It's constantly gonna have my imprint on it or whatever, and it goes back into that double slit type experiment type notion or whatever case may be. All of this, let's say it's a quantum soup, it's a wave, it's fields upon fields or whatever case may be, fields penetrating fields like torus fields, like electromagnetic fields type deal or whatever, constantly interpenetrating one another or whatever case may be. However, when I put my attention on something, it crystallizes, or the mind can then render some form of communication through that. And that's what I've gotten through actual practice from dealing with the experiential. So if I'm playing basketball and the game would suggest that I throw the ball inside of the hoop or whatever case may be, if I make the basket or if I miss the basket, typically you notice um, glitches or things to fix or imbalances when things don't function as the system had intended. But if that's the intention of the game or the parameters of the game for me to shoot the ball in the hoop or whatever case may be, me missing the basket or whatever case may be, that's the mind. Even me missing the basket, that in my intention is to make the basket, an aspect of that is the mind communicating something to me. Okay, and it's operating within the parameters of the game. And that goes from basketball, dice games, your refrigerator breaking down, anything. And this is why that you can filter a martial art through it. So when I say no system has a monopoly on messages from the divine or anything like that. It all works the same way, but it travels through the path of least resistance. So whatever your belief system is, or whatever symbolism more appropriately that your mind is wired for, or whatever, that's how you're gonna more than likely receive the bulk of your messages. That's the bulk of the things that you give your attention to, and that's kind of how your mind is wired, so to speak. Okay, symbolism is a technology of the mind. Systems of symbols function similar to operating systems in computers. Kind of like how you click on this icon, you have a graphic user interface or whatever case may be. That's the icons that you click on Windows or whatever case may be. Some systems that don't have, some operating systems that don't have the graphic user interfaces, you got to go into the DOS prompt and type it in from there, or whatever case may be. Those are different formats or whatever case may be. But symbolism works similar to like how we use operating systems in computers. A lot of this stuff, this mind science so-called stuff, it operates very similar to how computers operate. Okay, so most of the languages used today didn't exist 10,000 years ago. Yet symbols existed even prior to the spoken word, just like how we talked about before. When we talked about, go back to the video we did about symbols used to communicate prior to spoken language. We went into the book about mudras and everything like that, and we heard it from a couple of different perspectives, how symbols and gesture language precedes actual spoken language and everything like that, or whatever. The mind is always able to make use of whatever is available to craft its messages through its agents being symbols and patterns, right? And it's interestingly enough, um, one of the ways I figured this out was ayahuasca. If you do ayahuasca, divine is going to communicate with you. And you're going to see visions based on like how you're wired. if you're wired to see, I don't know, the Norse gods or something like that, then that's what you're gonna see. If that's what you believe in, and that's what you wired for, that's what you're gonna see. You're gonna see Odin in them. If you believe in um whatever your cultural references and symbolism that your mind is wired for, that's how it's gonna communicate with you. So it just uses your pre-existing uh neural pathways and everything like that. Let's see here. So I say all that to say, no, in my opinion, there's no system that just has a monopoly on God, so to speak. And I know we're really trying to stay in the scientist phase or whatever case may be. A lot of that terminology is more philosopher type situation, but um, yeah, no, but just for the sake of this conversation, no one system has a monopoly on that. We're all operating in the mind, and it's coming from through the lens of our individual perception and the lens of our individual experience and the symbolism that we understand. You can only um, view anything through the lens in which you can understand it, and that's kind of how the mind communicates with you. Even if it's giving you, in this case, like what we're talking about, if it's giving you messages through your environment and you could actually perceive the messages or whatever, it can only operate through what you have at your disposal, or what you can conceive of. It's not going to get you a hexadecimal code or whatever as a human being, because you ain't going to understand that. So all right, so this is one of the reasons why Kung Fu and animal styles are interesting, um, in the sense that that's something noticeably that was derived from the environment of the people who created it. For instance, a tiger and a crane, the equilibrium or pressure mediation of that system. Like, remember, go back into the last video that we talked about. We talked about the idea of principles and the patterns that express principles and the symbols that express principles, but how that's similar to pressure mediation, how we talk about balance and everything like that, how that's similar to pressure mediation as it pertains to pressure in a system, as it pertains to thermodynamics and hydrodynamics and things of that nature, or whatever case may be. It's a very similar thing. So the notion of maintaining balance or equilibrium or balanced relationships and stuff like that is very much likened unto pressure in the system or what have you. Um, so in the case of, let's say, like animals, the patterns of expression would be different. Let's see, uh, let's say like if you had a tiger and a crane or something like that. It would maybe a mix of strength and agility or something. The patterns of expression, maintaining balance or equilibrium in that system may look different than, let's say, like a system defined by like two tigers or something like that. Um, it forces the mind's principles to express themselves in more exotic ways within the ranges of motion. The body has access to the patterns or movements of a style, as well as its postures and stances are interpretable. You see what I'm saying? Because as has been said before, if we examine, you know, stances. Okay, Bodhidharma was the individual given credit with teaching the Shaolin monks the genesis of what will become Shaolin Kung Fu. Bodhidharma comes out of southern India. Southern India, when you're dealing with that, and you're dealing with yoga, Ayurvedic medicine, and when you're dealing with southern India and the martial arts that come out of southern India, you're talking about the precursors from Muay Thai, Muay Boran, all these different styles of that nature that influence the Southeast Asia and everything like that. When you're dealing with the martial arts of Southeast Asia, very yoga heavy. When you're dealing with yoga and asanas in yoga and everything like that, and we've done previous videos about that. Like how we said, gesture language precedes spoken language or whatever. So asanas are mudras, just like hand mudras. The hand mudras. I ain't throwing gang signs. I'm throwing mudras. You see what I'm saying? I'm civilian like a mug. You know, um, your asanas, the folds in the body, or whatever case may be, the body folds at certain what we would call pressure points, what they would probably call marmor points and everything like that. These are certain crisscrosses, places where nerve ganglia and stuff like that crisscross or whatever case may be. So it's sensitive spots in the body. They lead to like nerve channels that go to different organs and things of that nature, whatever. So your postures or whatever case may be are um, which are asanas or whatever case may be, are mudras. You see what I'm saying? Are expressions. So even in their genesis, it's still a level of communication. It's still they still have a certain exterior function, even though we use them for a martial purpose. Okay, so the patterns or movements of a style, because we're dealing with strings of movements and things. The patterns or movements of a style, as well as its postures and stances, are interpretable. You see what I'm saying? Or more appropriately, as far as like um, you having certain parameters in the system, and let's say like you're unable to perform a system, the place where it breaks down specifically um, in the theme or the function of the thing that breaks down or whatever is a good way of discerning things that may also mirror in your life. They may mirror other situations in your life or what have you. Let's see here. The patterns or movements of a style, as well as postures and its stances, are interpretable. How do we know this? Because all stances or movements in martial arts do something. They have a function. Within the ballpark of its function tells you the principle, as in the symbols, patterns, and principles. With the body being the environment that we observe, the body would then become what we refer to in True Master as the river of changes. So what I'm talking about in the book True Master, the river of changes, basically damn near the electromagnetic spectrum, where your body becomes the environment then, or the body of two people become the environment, and the interplay, the the rules of the game, or the rules of the inter interaction between the two people become the system. And there's a balance in that system. There's pressure within that system that can be measured based on the interaction between the two participants in it. You see what I'm saying? So we can kind of get into it like that. That's kind of how we discern a meaning from these things or whatever case may be. Okay, so let's see, in the sense of principles, like we were talking about the tiger style or whatever case may be, the tiger would be stronger and create an emphasis on that energy or level of pressure the system is capable of. Same with the crane specific energy. It may be more um, agile or whatever case may be, or exude more of that particular type of energy in that particular system. Um, this sets the parameters, boundaries, and prerequisites of the system. Example, if a system required you to bench press 1,000 pounds in order for you to execute its movements correctly. If you couldn't do that, then that would show up as a weakness on your part as it pertains to that area in the system or whatever case may be. So, whatever the system's parameters are, if you got to emulate a tiger and it requires you to bench press X amount of pounds or whatever case may be, and you couldn't do it, that would be a weakness within the system. So that would suggest some sort of deficiency in somewhere or whatever case may be. So something like that. Um, yeah, but in general, that's pretty much what I want to go over. Um, Pretty much how with this, anything that you give your attention to, with this system, anything you give your attention to can be is pretty much interpretable. So when you put your attention into things, structured systems such as games, or such as, let's say, like a car, which is a system or whatever case may be. It has a structure. It's basically a circuit. You see what I'm saying? That has a certain way it functions or whatever case may be. Um, the I don't want to say the more elaborate the system, but um, this is the same stuff. Let's say how you do anything is how you do everything. So the same patterns and readable data is going to come out if you were to, smoke a cigarette. The way you smoke your cigarette, the way you walk down the street or whatever, all this data comes out in the way you do everything or whatever case may be. But certain systems are built in such a way, and they have certain components and certain working parts or whatever that expose more and allow you to see certain things or whatever case may be, certain patterns come out. Your nervous system performs in a certain kind of way. So certain data comes out and it can be relegated to certain themes. And when it's relegated to those themes don't just show up in that one activity. They show up in every activity in your life or whatever. And like I said in previous videos, this isn't just a thing where it's a one-off situation where you notice one thing and then you just start, oh man, it's this, that, and the third or whatever. If you notice it in one place, you're going to notice it in several places. The mind is going to constantly keep, it doesn't shut up. It's going to constantly keep talking to you. It's going to constantly keep projecting this thing. And the only thing is your awareness of it, your ability to discern what you're actually seeing and recognize that thing. But you'll see it in multiple different places. If you do multiple different divinatory methods, you're going to see it. You're going to see the same theme in multiple different divinatory systems or whatever. So that's kind of what I wanted to go over right then. Yeah, I'll be making some other ones in regards to this, but just kind of getting into that whole idea and tying that into the double slit experiment a little bit, and pretty much the idea of being able to do divinatory readings pretty much on anything that you give your attention to. So yeah.